We've got, so here we go. Yuri on Ice.
I'm a little.
We are gonna.
I don't know. I'm just a little nervous because I'm like, I don't want to fuck it up because I love the show so much.
Yeah, we're gonna spoil it because it can't be talked about without spoiling it. If you haven't seen it,
I mean, we've done it before. We always spoil shit.
We always spoil it before, but I'm trying to say right now is that, like, if you haven't seen it, like, please go see it. We're gonna talk about it broadly at first, kind of naturally, but we're gonna spoil major plot points, as is always the case. But like with this show, like, you should see it.
I can't say that enough. It's changed my life.
That's not hyperbole. It really has.
It really has, and we'll get into why and how and what.
So this is a show directed by Sayo Yamamoto, who we've talked about before as the director of Michiko and Hatchin, which we loved. And she has also worked on Watanabe stuff, including the Ronin trilogy, which I'm going to keep calling so that becomes the term, because we need to have a term to collectively refer to Cowboy Bebop, Samurai Champloo, and Space Dandy, because they're absolutely a thematic trilogy.
Yeah, they're about losers wandering around with no direction in life.
Yeah. Episodic shows with, anyway. This is, I don't know if this is her baby, but it certainly looks, just based on, like, the production of it, the end result, you're like, oh, this had to have been, she must have poured everything she had into this.
This is her baby.
Yeah.
She's been trying to make the show before she made her other two shows.
Oh, yeah, because there's also a woman called Fujiko Mine, which I still haven't seen.
Yeah, like, she's always wanted to do a figure skating anime.
Yeah. So that's what this is. It is a sports anime about men's figure skating at a professional level. There's a lot of things that sets this show
competitive level. Apparently that's the correct term.
Okay. But, alright. There's a lot that sets this show apart from other sports animes, which is interesting for me because this is the first sports anime I've ever watched, and it subverts a lot of the tropes, which is
you saw Ping Pong.
Ping Pong also subverts a lot of tropes, I think.
Kind of.
But like that's just the thing with me in a lot of Japanese media, where it often turns out that the first entry in a genre that I will consume is like the go-to deconstruction of that genre. Like the first magical girl show I saw was Madoka. The first J-pop artist I ever got into was Kiari Pamu Pamu. Like, I always jump to the subversion of tropes before I'm ever familiarized with the tropes themselves.
It's partly my fault.
Firsthand, obviously. Like, I've asked a lot about what sports anime is about. So here's some ways that this differentiates from other sports anime. One, it's not at a high school level.
I'd say it's even more different than ping pong.
Yeah, because ping pong was still, like, at a high school level. Like this is, they say competitive, but, like, this is people who, like, their whole thing is they do figure skating on a fucking national stage. An international stage if they're good enough. Like this.
Well, the difference between competitive and professional is professional, you're getting paid to ice skate, where competitive is you're competing in the big events to be the best.
So professional.
And you only get paid if you win.
Professional is like ice shows, right?
Stuff like that.
What Pitch It wants to do. So yeah, but like it's comparable, I suppose, to like professional athleticism of other kinds, where you're competing on a national and international scale.
I mean, these are the greatest athletes in the sport in the world.
Yeah, and that's what the show is about. Sports animes usually are not about that. They're about
sports anime are usually about kids in high school or middle school learning to love the sport and learning to get good at the sport, and it's all on a school level. Or this is an international, like, we're the best at what we do level.
Yeah, like, they didn't do the world championship, but they did something that was, to the layman, indistinguishable from a world championship.
Yeah, I learned a lot about figure skating from this show, and the show focuses on the Grand Prix figure skating competition.
Yeah.
Which is actually not that important.
Yeah.
Competition. I mean, it's one of the big ones.
But it's not the world championship.
It's the world championship.
And the show is staged in such a way that I thought it was the World Championship. I thought this is what
I
they
thought it
called
was the World Championship too.
And there's also, unlike, your typical sports, and not only sports anime, this is not exclusive to anime, but like your sports media, there's no villain. There's no rival sports team of douchebag overfunded jocks. Like, everybody is the main character of their own story, and they're out there trying to be the best with what they got. And there's some characters who they fake you out in thinking that they are the villain, and then, sympathetic. I'm crying at their finale, because like, I hated this guy 20 minutes ago, but look at him fucking try his hardest. It's not like the fucking bald, scary men from Ping Pong. Which even then they were humanized, but they were human. I mean, there was subversion happening there too, but like, they were set up as the evil villains, and this show doesn't even really have that. There's just like a couple of guys who are kind of dicks.
Right. But they're not even that big of dicks. There is a villain, but we will get to the villain later.
It's got a villain the same way that Dumbo has a villain.
Yeah. So yeah, the anime was produced by Studio Mappa, directed by Sayo Yamamoto, and written by Mitsuru Kubo. Mitsuru Kubo is a mangaka who is also a huge figure skating fan. And she and Sayo Yamamoto kind of found each other because Sayo Yamamoto has been wanting to make this anime forever and sort of leaned on Kubo, and they worked together. It's actually really cute, the stories of them. Like, they would go to Yamamoto's house and like cook dinner and talk about the show while they were like formulating what they wanted it to be. And it spent a lot of time in development figuring out what they wanted the show to be about. And again, subverting, typical sports anime, they wanted it to be about the relationship between an athlete and their coach, not about between an athlete and their rival. And then as they developed the show further, they realized that it was also a story about love of all kinds. So the skating choreography was done by Kenji Miyamoto, who is a famous choreographer and skating coach. He's done programs for many different figure skaters, Yuzuru Hanyu, and like all of Japan's big skaters that they've had in the past, like however many years. He was a champion himself. So it's, really neat that they actually like had it recorded. Like I've seen footage of him recording or of performing the choreographies for the show for the animators to use as reference, because that's a thing that's a question a lot of people had when the show first came out. They wanted to know if it was rotoscoped or not. The answer, it is not. At any point is it rotoscoped.
And I could tell by the first figure skating scene in the first episode made my jaw hit the fucking floor because I'd never seen anything like it. And I could tell that it wasn't rotoscoped because it was kind of organic enough looking, like there was just enough of like, the thing about rotoscoping is that it's gonna look, especially like modern rotoscoping, it's gonna look like a little too perfect. Whereas,
right, and like
where there was the imperfections of handmade media in that, in all of the routines, which to me speaks to like, yeah, this is hand drawn, was clearly done from reference. But the thing is that, like Golden Age Disney, they had to film their own reference because there was nothing to go on. Nobody has ever animated figure skating like this.
No, like you think about how they animate figure skating, and I think like Charlie Brown Christmas Special. They're just like on one foot sliding along.
Yeah.
Nobody has ever attempted to animate something this difficult before.
And I would imagine
particular about human movement.
And I would imagine that that if anyone else had tried, maybe as like a one-off thing, it would be in the sort of Princess Tutu method of just like a lot of stills. A lot of dramatic stills. This doesn't have any this has like extremely few dramatic stills.
It's always moving, it's always dynamic, and the editing is paced in such a way where it doesn't really linger too long on shots that aren't moving, It doesn't cut really any corners. And yeah, the animation quality dips a lot.
It dips in some episodes where you have to be fucking reasonable about this. It dips in the episodes where there are 6 figure skating routines.
That's what I say where it doesn't cut corners, in the sense that they could have not choreographed all those different routines and chosen, oh, we're only going to animate the routines of the main characters. All these other side characters, we're not going to animate their routines. And then Kubo and Yamamoto were like, no, we're going to do it. And Mappa was like, okay.
Oh no. It's
so they
instrumental.
stretched themselves as thin as possible.
Yeah, it's absolutely instrumental to the end product that they do choreograph all of those different routines, because that's how they characterize each character. Like there's, it's not just the jumps and the steps and the moves. It's very much the emotion that is being conveyed in each performance. So it's instrumental to us knowing the heart of each character by knowing the heart of what they're doing as they're fundamentally dancing, which is an emotional thing. So you see each character through their routines.
Right.
And for our main characters, Yuri and Yuri most prominently, you're going to see the same routine a lot. But because the characters are in different headspaces each time they do that, the emotion of the performance is different, and they're good enough at animating it where that comes across.
Yes.
It's not like Utna where you're seeing this, where they're cutting corners.
It's literally the same thing.
It's literally the same thing to cut corners. Like, they are making a point where, yeah, you're going to see the same routine a lot, but we're going to make it fresh and new each time. It's going to be, right. Don't phase out here like you did while watching all the fucking sword fights in Utna, Nikki.
But yeah, like, every single performance is part of the screen time, more or less. And it feels like you're watching an actual figure skating competition live. That's the experience of watching the show that they captured. Like, the first 4 episodes are establishing our characters and our investment, why we care about these people, and why we want them to win, which is super important for a sports story. And then the rest of the show, it's like you're watching it on TV, but you have like the behind the scenes knowledge of like what's going on in everyone's heads, what kind of little mini crises are coming up. And it's very suspenseful. And like from episode to episode, you're like, I want to know like who wins, like who scores highest in the free program, like what's going on. Like it's super fun. It captures the joy of the sport, which is a really amazing thing to do. And a hard thing to do, especially for something that's pretty niche, like figure skating. Because, like, you know, there are people who don't give a crap about figure skating, but the show makes you care about it because it shares with you what is so special about it and why people love it the way that they do.
There's so much, like, unfettered passion that goes into this show that it's so difficult to... Like to me, it's completely beyond me that anybody could fucking get up in this show's gooch for anything it does, because what it does so phenomenally well.
I mean, and like the animation, for instance, this show used more key animators than any other anime series during the fall 2016 season, and they actually pulled a Disney, where traditionally in Japanese, in anime, animators are assigned to scenes. They animate certain scenes. Whereas animation here in the States, like stuff like Disney sort of pioneered, where animators are assigned to characters. And that's what they did for a lot of Yuri on Ice. They assigned specific animators to animate specific characters, not entire scenes. And that's why it's so expressive and so immediately feels different from your typical anime, because the animator is capable of focusing on just the one character that they're playing as. You know, like, as an animator, you're an actor, in a sense. And instead of just, like, copying down the scene, it was a very different process for Japanese anime, especially mainstream, in-house produced stuff.
And I think it's very important to a show like this that when this skater is on the ice, they always skate in a consistent way. Like, obviously they're going to grow and each performance is going to be different, but the energy that each skater has is unique, and that's easily the best way to capture that is to have one animator do all the scenes for this character.
Right.
Like, there have been some people pooping on Yuri on Ice's animation because of the occasional times where they have to, where it's not as, where it's less amazingly good. Because, like, I mean, the fucking Crunchyroll Anime Awards dropped earlier this month, and Yuri on Ice swept, which was kind of inevitable.
Because it was the most popular anime of the year. Like, it's a popularity poll. What do you expect?
Yeah, it won every
thing it was nominated
category
for.
It was nominated for. We don't know Anime of the Year yet, but it's gonna win it. Which is sometimes, which in certain cases is unfortunate because it meant that a lot of other great shows from the season got snubbed. For example, like, Nina, you yourself voted for in Best Animation Mob Psycho 100, which is also a gorgeous and phenomenally animated show that we'll probably talk about.
I voted for it because it was more consistent with its overall presentation. But I definitely think Yuri on Ice deserved to be nominated, particularly for trying something no one's ever tried before.
Yeah, that's why I voted for it myself, and why I think it deserved to win is that, you know, Mob Psycho 100, obviously I've never seen anything exactly like that, but elements of it I've seen in other places before. Yuri on Ice, the goal was let's do an amazingly faithful and passionate animation job of professional figure skating, which has never been done before, and let's do it amazingly well right out of the gate. So, for me, what I felt was most important was that it did something that I've absolutely never seen before, and probably won't ever see again until there's a second season. I can't imagine anybody else doing this.
I really can't. Like, I remember when the announcement for this show first dropped, and we talked about it on the Toon Goons, and all I knew about it was that it was about figure skating, and it was directed by Saya Yamamoto, and I'm like, I cannot wait to see how they try to do this. I was like, how are they going to do this? It's amazing. Figure skating? Are you crazy?
We've been talking about this show since the news first dropped, and, like, we were on board. Like, I don't want to be like we were there first, but, like,
I don't want to be that person, but I literally was. Like, I knew about it like a year before it came out, and I was like, I can't wait to watch it. And then I watched it as soon as it came out, and then I was like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah, like, I remember when I first heard the announcement and, like, when the first episode dropped, I was telling everybody, like, this is the new sports anime Heat. I didn't realize it was going to be the entire Heat of the year.
Yeah, it really took over.
Yeah.
And I think part of it was, I mean, we'll get into why I think it became as popular as it became, but yeah, like, you know, so the plot, if you don't know.
Well, one thing I want to put in very briefly why I think it had such a massive appeal, including beyond people who I would consider anime people, is that it's an anime, absolutely, but it's not a anime. It doesn't have all. It's not really
grounded
rooted
in reality.
Yeah, it's not about your typical anime things. It's it is purely a human show about people and their interactions with each other through this sport. Whereas, again, you compare it to Mob Psycho 100, which I would say is the second best anime I've seen this year. Is also spectacular. That's very much a show that is rooted in anime. And so many people watching Yuri on Ice aren't anime people. Like, there are so many people that I've met online who don't watch anime, and they've started watching this show, and they're like, I just really like what this show does and how it's put together. And it's because they emphasize character so much. In a way, it's kind of like the Cowboy Bebop of this era, in that it's got this massive, you know, huge market appeal that really does break the barrier of what you consider, like, anime fans. Because that's the thing about anime, is you've kind of got to be ready to deal with anime and all the shit that anime does. And the people embrace about anime that is often hard to swallow for people who aren't used to the tropes and the cultural core of what anime is.
And honestly, it's not what I go to anime for. I don't really like anime. Yeah. I don't like anime that's too anime sometimes. Like, I consume it, but it's not what I go to. They're not necessarily my favorites.
Yeah, I think that it has the appeal of, like, a more grounded Ghibli movie, like a Wind Rises.
Yeah. But, you know, and it also helps that it's a sports story. It's paced very fast, you know. You want to watch the next episode as soon as the one you're watching is over. And it's just like, you immediately like what's going on, and you want to see more. Not to mention the stuff that it's doing that you're not getting literally anywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we actually haven't even talked about how it does representation yet, and I guess we'll get into that core after we talk about the plot.
Yeah, so the basic plot is, we see the majority of the show through the perspective of our main character, Yuri Katsuki, who is Japan's figure skating ace. He's the top figure skater in Japan, one of the top figure skaters in the global circuit. But during his first Grand Prix final event that he qualified for, he got really sad because his dog died, and then he freaked out, and then he totally bombed it and did a pretty bad job and came in last.
Yeah, the stress came to him. The stress got to him and just completely overwhelmed him, and he took a shit on the ice.
Essentially. And then, he's having all this mixed feelings about his career, what he's going to do. He takes a year off, he finishes school, and then he comes back to his hometown, and he's like, what the fuck am I going to do? And he decides to go back to the source. He's like, okay, why did I start figure skating in the first place? And he started figure skating because he admired this famous figure skater in this universe named Viktor Nikiforov, who's sort of an amalgamation of many real-life figure skaters. That's another thing. The characters in this show are not one-to-one parallels of real-life figure skaters. They are inspired by many real-life figure skaters, but they are not like, this is not the story of one person who's a real person, which is important to note. So he's like, okay, I started figure skating because I really like this one skater, and it made me like skating, so I'm just going to go back to that. And he practices Victor's Grand Prix final program that he did that year that they competed against each other. And it gets recorded and put on the internet, and everybody's talking about it. And lo and behold, Victor sees it and shows up to his family's hot springs and is like, I'm gonna be your coach. Cue anime screaming into the void.
Yeah. And he says that while naked in a hot spring, yeah.
Yes.
It isn't stated at this point in the show, but it's heavily implied that there is the admiration for Victor goes beyond just his professional acumen. Victor is an empirically
crush.
I mean, Victor is empirically a very handsome and charming man.
Right.
And he has been, and I think this is worth pointing out, he has been the absolute king of the sport for almost his entire career. He's, the
5-time world and Grand Prix champion. No one's ever done that.
Yeah, an unparalleled record. And at the beginning of the series, he's 27, which is like 113 in figure skater years. Because, I mean, the reason why, if you're not familiar with sports, like this is the thing I know most about sports, is that in almost all sports you have to quit because your knees get ruined. Because running around is the worst thing you can do. Running and jumping is the worst thing you can do to the human body. So in most sports, there's a very short period of your life in which you can do it. I think like gymnastics is actually the most brutal. Whereas like some sports like boxing, because the actual sport itself doesn't involve a lot of running if you're a big enough guy, like you can be a boxer into your 50s, but figure skating is very high impact dancing and like crazy jumps and falling on a very hard surface. Like it
ground
incorporates a lot
your
of
feet into pulp.
Yeah, it incorporates a lot of elements of ballet, which will also destroy your pathetic human body. Like it's a sport that most people have to retire from. I think before they're 25. Like you can't keep doing it. And this guy, and Victor, the thing, like at the beginning of the show, Victor could have gone for another season. Like, physically, he was still in the best shape of his career. He could have kept going. Like he's an absolute marvel of the sport. Like he's untouchable.
Yeah, like people aren't competing for first place; they're competing for second place.
Yeah,
like it's not even a contest.
He's the Michael Jordan. He's the Tiger Woods in his prime. Like he is He's the Usain Bolt. He's unbeatable. So that's the thing, is that this guy who had a terrible last season, took a year off, has no idea if he's even going to continue skating. All of a sudden, the best figure skater in the fucking world shows up to his podunk town, telling him, "I'm gonna coach you for this next season." Like, it's a massive thing. It establishes this. Well, it establishes this almost manic pixie dream girl.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I think it's good to, at this point, talk about framing of the narrative and expectations.
Yes.
So the narrative starts off very manic pixie dream guy. The first few episodes, Victor barely says anything. He's just seems perfect. He's this eccentric foreigner person. He's amazing. And that's because we only see everything through Yuri's perspective, including Yuri's failures. Yuri introduces himself as a dime a dozen figure skater. He's not. He's the best figure skater in his entire country.
Which I actually didn't realize until you said it now, but like, oh yeah, he's like the only skater from Japan to be in the Grand Prix. Like, he's the best in his country, and he's so self-immolating.
And he, one of the top 6 and in one of these big competitions, well-admired skater, has fans. He's, like, in the Japanese Figure Skating Society webpage that they show during the montage, he's the face of figure skating. He's, like, when you click the link to see who are all the figure skaters, he's the face you click on. Yeah. He's not this small nothing of a person, but because he frames himself this way, he frames himself as a loser. He's like, I'm a loser, I'm a nothing shit boy at this sport, and Victor is this amazing, oh my god, is a god in human terms. Yeah,
I mean, if you look at it in terms of sheer numbers, like, he's only 5 steps below Victor in the world that year.
Right.
There's a lot of figure skaters. Victor is one, he was number 6, and he's like, I'm a piece of dog shit.
I'm the trash king. Which, we'll talk about Yuri's, a little bit more about Yuri in a bit, but I want to finish up with this, like, framing and narrative, because Yuri is an unreliable narrator. And we don't realize this until well into the series. But he is not telling us the truth of things as they actually are, only as he perceives them. Hence the manic pixie dream boy shit. Because for him, that's what it's like. It's like this magical, oh my god, I can't even imagine it. And I know a lot of people watching the first episode were, like, upset. They're like, this doesn't seem revolutionary, this is very basic. And honestly, I felt the same way when I was first watching the show. I'm like, okay, so are we gonna learn anything about Victor? Is he just gonna be this amazing, perfect human being? No. Because as the show progresses, we switch perspectives. We see Victor's perspective, we see other characters' perspectives, and there's hints all throughout the beginning that Yuri is an amazing figure skater. His posters are all over his city, his house is just bursting with his trophies and awards, his family doesn't seem to worry about him because they know he's really good at what he does. And, Victor came to be his coach for a reason, and it's not just because he saw the video, it's as we learn, they had actually met before, and he forgot about it. And that's one of the brilliant things the show, it's probably my favorite thing the show does, is how it subverts your expectations, where you think it's going to be like, okay, this savior person's going to come out of nowhere and save this guy's career and make it become this magical fairy person, and they're going to win, and everything's going to be beautiful, and they're going to learn how to believe in themselves again. And it's like, no, it's actually, everybody's a person. Everybody begins as a person and they end as a person. Flawed and selfish and insecure and not really good with social relationships. And it's very brilliant. And I just really love the way that the show completely threw you for a loop and made you believe it was something else. And it does this all the time. Like, in the first episode, Yuri talks about his best friend, Yuko, who he grew up with. And she currently owns currently works for the figure skating rink in his hometown. They grew up together, they skated together. She's the reason why he started figure skating. She showed him Victor. And it's framed like she was his childhood crush. And when he performs Victor's routine, he was performing it for her. And it's all framed in this way like he's trying to confess something to her. But then out of nowhere, her 3 children pop up. And we learn that she's married. And you're like, oh, that's not what I thought this was going to be. And
yeah,
just like the
she's like
language.
Happily married with a family. Like it's as far away from expectations as it could possibly be. I thought she was going to be like a main love interest in a very standard way. Because, I mean, This is, me watching the first episode the day it dropped. I could tell that he, like, had an affection for Victor, but I had no idea how, queer this show was going to get.
But I don't think anybody knew.
Especially, I mean, it was called Yuri on Ice, which is like, it's all boys, but...
Blah, 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 I hate that joke. It's a bad joke.
And the other thing is that we've come to, like, kind of invent our own queer narratives and stuff because they don't exist in the text in so much stuff. Like... Right,
and, like, Victor in the first episode with his ass shot was presented like, okay, so this is kind of this is appealing to people who like fan servicey shots of dudes' butts. It's not really an authentic depiction of anything. Like, it's a butt. Like, we meet this character and he's a butt man. And it's like, okay, whatever. But then as it progresses, we get less butts, mainly because, as we've mentioned before, the first few episodes of an anime always tend to have more fan service than any other episode in the season. Which is just a thing that anime does now. They just have to put the fan service in the beginning so people decide they want to watch the show, because that's how otaku markets work. It's very frustrating. We talked about this in our Parasite episode, where he had the boob grab in that first episode, and then it was like, that's fucking uncomfortable, and then shit like that never happens for the rest of the show. Mm-hmm. Whereas here, there's always affection, but that's sort of like blatant. Like, here's a butt! Stops happening pretty quickly once all the places are set and the stakes are there and we know what we're here for and what we're doing. Because everybody becomes a character. Eventually. So, Victor says he's gonna coach Yuri. Yuri's, like, drooling and, like, losing his mind. He had gained some weight in the year he took off, and then Victor's like, you have to lose weight. Meanwhile, Yuri Plisetsky, the up-and-coming 15-year-old rising skating star in Russia, finds out and is super pissed because Victor promised Yuri Plisetsky that he'd choreograph his senior debut program. Because Plisetsky had won the junior championships, and now he's moving on to the senior level. So he comes to Japan, and he's all very demanding. He's very different from Yuri. He likes cheetah print, and he's very loud and rude, and
the Russian punk he's known as.
Right.
I mean, he's like the star up and comer, like as the circuit of like senior debut, like he's the hottest shit to just come out of the junior division, like
right.
It's kind of hard to grasp at first, like we said with Yuri K, that like it's. That these are some of the best skaters in the world, and they normally don't make not only sports anime but sports media about that. We like the typical sports story involves underdogs, and it's not that Yuri is necessarily not an underdog because he blew it his last time. He'd been a year off. He's way out of the game. He's got to climb back up. But he's not nobody. He's not nobody going against the best guy. He's one of the best guys trying to be number one best guy.
Yeah.
And that's everybody. Everybody's an extremely good and accomplished skater. Like, there are also no underdogs, really.
No. And Plisetsky serves as a foil to Yuri. He's a lot louder about what he wants. He creates this conflict where, Victor might leave. Victor's going to go back to Russia. They have this competition. Yuri K wins, and Victor becomes his coach. Now, part of why we're introduced to Yuri in the way that we are is because Yuri suffers from anxiety and depression that's undiagnosed and untreated, but very, very clear as day for people like me and Nikki who have brain problems and can sympathize, or empathize, rather.
Both, maybe. I'll never figure it out.
Empathize, because we've been there, we've done that, we know it. Yuri, his anxiety is related directly to his self-worth, and his whole career, he loves figure skating, but it also tortures him, because for him, it's number one or nothing. If he doesn't win gold, he's a failure. He's disappointing people, and he feels like a loser all the time, even when he wins, because he's not winning enough, or the best. He puts a lot of pressure on himself.
It's clear in actually the first episode when he goes back home that, like, nobody thinks of him that way. Everybody sees him as, like, a sports hero because he's so good at it. Nobody was actually, like, thought he was a failure for coming in sixth at the Grand Prix. Everybody was like, holy shit, our hometown hero got to the fucking Grand Prix final. He's so good at this. Well, so the thing about his poor self-worth is almost completely self-manufactured. The only thing is that Yurio, at the end of the Grand Prix final, kicked in the bathroom door and screamed at him for being a dipshit and for having the same name as him.
Yeah, it's like, you have my name and you're crying. Stop being a pansy. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was kind of mean, but like...
But that was literally the only piece of external criticism that aligns with his internal criticism. Everybody else was like, I mean, I think like some of the the sports casters were like, oh, this is kind of a disappointing show from Kotsky. We thought he could do better than this. Like, we've seen him do better, but like he's a very good figure skater, but he thinks he's dog shit.
Well, part of why he's so disappointed is because Yuri's dream is to compete on the same field as Victor. He wants to compete at the same level. He wants to become an equal as Victor. And he feels like he failed that. He feels like he did not prove himself as a real competitor. And part of why Yuri is the way that he is because he has this tendency to isolate himself. He has this amazing support system. Both of his parents are around and they love him. He has a sister who loves him. He has a ballet teacher that he's had since he was a kid who loves him. You know, he has his best friends who work at the ice skating rink who love him. And yet, he always feels like he's alone. When he's on the ice, he is, you know, because it's a solitary performance in a way. And he feels that pressure of everybody's support. And he feels like he has to prove it, that they didn't waste their time on him or believing in him. Yuri's Seiyu in the Japanese, his voice actor, that's another thing they did very different for this show, is the voice acting sessions for this show were like 3 times longer than they normally are for any other anime. They really had the actors stay and really get into these scenes and these lines and these characters. To the point where Yuri's voice actor at one point was like crying because he finally understood Yuri's dilemma, and his dilemma is that he just feels so alone. At the end of the day, he has to prove everything by himself. And that's why he struggles so much, and that's why no matter how much support he seems to have, it doesn't do it for him. Until Victor shows up. And Victor is in his world. You know, his parents don't seem to super understand skating. All of his family and friends, they like skating, they know skating, but they're not in his shoes. Victor has been there. He knows what it's like. He's the greatest figure skater in the world, and he certainly has had a lot of pressure levied on him. And Victor forcibly intrudes on Yuri's space. One of the great things I like that Yamamoto does with the direction of this series is, in the beginning, there's always a wall or a barrier between Yuri and Yuko, or Yuri and Minako, or anybody. Whenever he's talking to somebody in the first few episodes, there's space between them, either a literal barrier or like a large gap. Victor literally puts his face in his face.
I didn't realize that. That's good spimbolism.
It is. Like, Victor shocks Yuri out of his comfort zone and is like, no, I see something there that you don't see. Everybody else sees it, and I'm going to make you get it out here.
That's why he was naked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like
no
it was
boundaries.
It was superficially so that you could see the top of his butt crack, but like it's very symbolic. It's like, yes, there's nothing in between you and me. You and I are gonna fucking get in this naked bath with me, and I'm gonna teach you how to skate.
And that's what Yuri's journey becomes, is learning how to be helped and to accept help and to learn support and to learn how to receive love. Because like I said, the show is about love, but it's not just about the relationship between Yuri and Victor, which we haven't even gotten to yet. It's about love of the sport, self-love, familial love, friendship. All kinds of love you can conceive of is in the show. And they sort of set that up in the beginning when Victor chooses the erotic love program and the pious agape love. But it's not just agape and eros, it's familia and all the other ones the Greeks made up.
Platonia.
It's all in the show.
Selphononia. I don't fucking know.
And for me, like, the thing that I love the most is that it's a show about learning to love yourself by being loved by other people, and that's okay. And you can do it, and it makes you stronger. It's not that you're leaning on other people. You're not depending on other people. Because people like Yuri are scared to demand stuff from other people. They don't want to become too dependent. It's not a dependency. It's a partnership. It's a relationship. That's what you do. You give and you take, and you become stronger and better for it, and you become a better person. And everybody in this whole show becomes a better person at the end of it, and it makes me cry. It's so beautiful.
And that's a big reason why it both resonated with Nina and I so much, is that, like, 2016 was a bad year for the world, but it was a very good year for personal growth for both Nina and myself. Like,
but through hardship, because I graduated college, but it wasn't pretty. It was messy.
It was scrappy.
And it didn't go the way I wanted to. My thesis did not go the way that I wanted to. I was not happy in 2016.
Yeah, I mean, you moved out, you have your first adult apartment. That was a nightmare because your landlord is a grade A son of a bitch.
Right.
We're calling you out, Harry. Larry? What's his name? Harry, Larry? Harry.
Harry.
Yeah, he sucks.
He does.
And, like, I kind of got out of a years-long funk of fundamental self-loathing and really, really intense depression. Like, I found love last year, and I learned what it is to be happy and what it is to, like, really have an intense love and mutual love with another person. And like, for until that happened between me and my now boyfriend, like, I thought I would never be happy. I thought I was fundamentally incapable of it. Like, I thought that my personality and my fucked up brain was fundamentally incapable of happiness. And I was proven wrong this past year. Thanks mostly to what happened to my boyfriend and what happened between me and him. But, like, this show really, I feel like, exemplifies that kind of personal growth of learning to love and learning to be loved. You have to learn how to be loved not for everybody. I don't want to assume that. I only really know how my own brain works, but, like, I had to learn how to be loved. I had to learn what love actually meant. And
me too. Like, growing up, when you have brain problems, when your anxiety is such a huge force in your life, sometimes when people tell you, when they compliment you and they say good things about you, when they say that they love you, it feels like you're being attacked.
It feels like an attack. And it's like, I say that and I'm like, I actually can't rationalize why I felt that way for so long, but I felt fucking attacked.
Yeah, it hurt. It physically, emotionally, spiritually, it hurt when people said nice things to you. and tried to be good to you and say that they loved you and they cared about you and they were thoughtful towards you. You felt like you didn't deserve it. That's and that's kind of how Yuri is. He doesn't feel like he deserves anything. And then he learns that he does, that he's earned it, and that he doesn't even have to earn it. He just is, and that's enough. And it's so hard to get to that point. Like, the fact that I've been unemployed and all I do all day is sit in my room, my tiny, tiny room, my tiny New York closet room, with myself, and all I can do is look at myself and talk to myself and think about myself all day long. And I finally worked through a lot of these issues that I have because I have had to face them head on. But Yuri, he's a figure skater. He's been doing this since he's like 6 years old. He's not have time for therapy. He's, not to mention like cultural stigma about it. Like, Kubo has said on Twitter that for season 2, they're really thinking about focusing more on Yuri's mental state, because throughout the whole show, he calls it my mental weakness. And it's not a weakness. It's an illness. It's not a fault of your character. It's not you. It's something else that gets in the way of you being you. And I haven't seen a show, especially an anime, especially like a sports anime with like there's so much pressure and all this shit, to really capture that so beautifully and so elegantly and respectfully. People, rant and rave about the romantic stuff, which I do love, but to me, that's why I love this show as much as I do. That being said, we should probably talk about the romance.
Yeah. But before we do that, I just want to, add on to that. The whole mental weakness thing, like, I internalize a lot of my stuff as personality defects. Like, mm-hmm. And like, especially for me, like someone who's always trying to be funny, the line between like hating myself for real and hating myself as a joke, or I have this actual problem for real, or I affect this actual problem as a joke because wouldn't it be funny if I was even worse off than I am now? Like, it's this really weird thing that is so hard to, when you're in it, it's so hard to really step back and realize like how fucked up that is. And
how you're hurting yourself.
And part of me, like, just speaking for myself, is in the moment, I'm like, in the moment, you don't want to fight that because it's like, well, this is what my personality is, and it would be disingenuous to challenge it. And also, it's funny. Which, like, the idea of being sad because it's funny is, like, not a thing that's exclusive to me, and it's, like, a whole other problem. But, like, the thing is that when you're in it, it's fucking funny. And I actually don't think that there's anything inherently funny about being happy.
Not really, no.
That's the thing. But, like, it's not helpful.
It's like what Garnet said, all comedy derives from pain.
All comedy does derive from pain.
And for Yuri, like, he just, this is who he is. Like, he's always known this is who he is. Everybody around him, that's the other thing I really like. I like how his whole support system understands him so well. Even if they can't do for him what he needs, they understand how he works. Because they love him and care about him. And being on the other side of it, I've been in the same place. Like, I've been the anxious one and the one taking care of somebody who's anxious, where it's like, you know their patterns, you know what they do. And some people can bridge that gap, but not everybody can. And I love the way that his, like, loved ones sort of treated him. We're like, that's just the way that he gets sometimes, that's just Yuri being Yuri. And maybe partly that's why he had a problem, because he just thought that's who he was. Like, when he has that discussion on the beach with Victor, which is when their relationship really actually starts being a genuine human thing, where they're talking on the beach and Victor's like, what do you want me to do for you? Like, what do you want me to be? I can't read you. I don't know what you want. And Yuri's like, my whole life I always felt like I was weak and I was dragging people down. But my family never made me feel that way. And yet, I push people away, and I'm not very affectionate, and I don't want anyone to think I'm weak. Nobody thinks of me as weak, but I don't want to be weak. And that's when he makes that realization about what he wants his theme for this year's his programs to be about love, where he's like, he talks about love, and like a lot of people took issue with this because he said, it's my love isn't just a romantic or platonic thing. And a lot of people thought that was just like them trying to wiggle their way out of this same-sex relationship they've built up. But for me, it was more like Yuri was saying that his relationship with Victor and his relationship with the people in his life goes way beyond these simple monikers. The feelings that he gets from Victor, the energy, the livelihood, it's not something so easily described. Like, one of the producers of the show had tweeted out in an interview and said that when people had asked if their relationship was romantic, he said, "Oh, certainly, but I think they're beyond that. The relationship they have isn't just that. They're two people who fundamentally, like, understand each other, or strive to understand each other and make each other better." And that's what Yuri was saying with his theme of love. Like, love is the force that makes us better. And it was that way for the other characters, too. Like, in Yuri Plasetsky's final performance of his program, his coach was like, true strength comes from people who understand the kind of love that fuels them, Like, every character is fueled by this kind of love, and it's, like, all around them. And I think that's more what they were trying to say. They weren't trying to say, like, oh, it's not actually, like, no, it wasn't a no homo, it's more than romance.
Yeah. Yeah, the homo is like a very, very small, almost diminutively small part of it. Which is another thing that I resonated with, like, again, with me and my boyfriend, like, that's where we started. When we were first, like, starting to get really into each other, we were in a place in both of our lives where we couldn't date. But I was still crazy for him, and the way I described it was that, the way I feel for you transcends platonic or romantic love. It's something very different. And it's the idea that, like, you complete me is like some overused dopey ass shit, but, like, in a real way, it's like, you allow me to access a part of myself and to live a more truthful version of myself that I wouldn't have been able to without you. Like
they help to fulfill you.
Exactly.
Like, you feel like a fully actualized person.
And I actually think that kind of relationship is more common than we think. But, like, ever since me and my boyfriend did start dating, we're just like, we're boyfriends. Because it's a lot fucking easier to explain to our parents.
Yeah, and it's almost...
But, so, like, we just go to this ease of language over accuracy, because to actually describe how we feel about each other takes a whole paragraph where, I'm busy, he's busy, we're busy. We just say, we're dating, we're in love. Like, that's just what we say, because it's for expedience. But, like, when you can't say that, you're actually forced to describe it in a more meaningful, if clunkier way. And that's what this show did.
Right.
Because, I guess we could talk about, like, the accusations of censorship and queer baiting. Like, for numerous reasons, they can't just have, well, people were criticizing the idea that Victor and Yuri never say to each other, "I love you." First of all, that is a clunky ass piece of dialogue. Like, imagine actually writing and listening to that. Like, it sucks.
And frankly, as somebody who's watched a lot of anime, it's so rare for characters to actually do that. Like, for me, this is when we get into, like, Western versus Eastern territory, because, for one thing, in Japanese, it's much more common during a confession to say the equivalent of "I like you" than "I love you." Like, love confessions will be them being "I like you," in the same way you would say "I like pork cutlet bowls," hence the play with the pork cutlet bullshit. Like, it's very Japanese.
Yeah. Now, it's often localized to "I love you," but that's not what they're saying.
No, it's not. It's saying, "I really like you."
It's saying, "I like you." Like, it's that Hey Arnold shit. Like,
and these are adults being like, "I like you." Like, it's, okay. It's a cultural thing, and I can name so many of my favorite anime Like, we were just talking about, say, like, Tatami Galaxy, which was kind of a romance. They never say I love you. They never kiss. It's so rare, even in an actual romance genre anime, for them to kiss and hold, like, say I love you.
Did they do that in Princess Tutu? I don't think they did. You've seen them.
They never did.
No.
And they got married.
Married!
It's more likely for characters to get married and have children in anime than to kiss and say I love you. And this goes for straight couples too, because, like, I think about, like, Rurouni Kenshin. He got married. You never saw him kiss his wife. Then he fell in love with another woman after his wife died. They never kissed. Like, the only kiss in all of Rurouni Kenshin was between the villain and his significant other. Like, it's just not in Japanese culture to physically express your affection. Like, there are different ways of doing it, like hand-holding, where you intertwine your fingers, like Victor and Yuri did.
Oh,
That's very significant in Japanese culture of
I'm realizing
affection.
how many times... Like, I just watched Luluko again with my boyfriend, like, they did that, or, like, there's that ending scene in, Tales of Xillia, where I was really impressed that the graphics could do that.
Yeah, that's, for a lot of people in Japan, that's a kiss. That's enough. That signifies everything it needs to signify. And it's not just
also,
Japan, in other cultures.
Keep in mind that we're talking about how this stuff is conveyed in media, not like how two people interact in their private lives.
Exactly. But, like I've seen films from, like, you know, I remember I saw an Afghani film, and it was a love story. The characters never physically touched each other. They never said I love you. They certainly never kissed, but you knew it was a love story because of how it was directed. Bollywood films, they don't kiss in Bollywood films. The climax, the relationship confirmation, is a song and dance number. They very rarely kiss or say I love you in those things. Different cultures have different ways of expressing affection and love. The fact that we're like, they have to have a kiss on screen and they have to say I love you, otherwise it's not real, is such a Western-centric point of view. It's very upsetting to me.
And also, it frankly doesn't even hold water in all Western media. Like...
Exactly. I've seen so many Western things where they don't kiss or hold hands, or say I love, or maybe they hold hands at the most. They don't kiss or say I love you.
I love you is such a shit piece of dialogue. It's clunky. There's a lot more elegant ways as a writer that you can express that.
Exactly. And we always like, oh, the drama of the kiss, like they do the kiss and like everything's perfect and great. Well, this show subverts the kiss. And one of the best scenes in anything, when Yuri's having a panic attack before his free program in China, because he got in first place during his short program. And now he's in first place, all the pressure's on him, all the eyes are on him, he's having a panic attack. And Victor's like, okay, I don't know how to deal with this. What if I just kiss you? Will that make it better? And Yuri's like, no! Do you know this isn't just big for anime. That's big for all of media. I can't tell you how many stupid movies I've seen, or even smart movies I've seen, where the solution to the problem is a kiss. Here it wasn't, and they had a fight about it, and it was an argument. It was like, this isn't what I need from you. You can't just kiss me to shut me up from my problems. But I've seen it in so many movies, Western and otherwise, where one character's upset and the other one's like kissing them on the mouth, and then suddenly everything's fine. Or that the problem is relieved, or it's not. And it's brilliant. And then when they do kiss, it means more. Because yeah, that's the thing. They actually kiss!
They do. And like, oh, we don't see the lips touch for more than 4 seconds. We don't see the lips like smooshing against each other. Like, shut the fuck up.
Have you seen kissing in anime? It looks bad because their faces are not meant for lip contact.
And a lot of animes, the mouth is just on the side of the face when they're in profile, which is like, a profile is the best angle to stage a kiss, but their mouths are on in the middle of their cheeks. Stupid.
And again, it's a matter of direction and presentation, and a lot of those values are culturally enforced. Like, Kubo said on Twitter, after that episode aired with the kiss, and she said, you know, I've been getting a lot of complaints from international fans about whether it was a kiss or not, but none of the Japanese fans have given me a hard time at all.
Yeah.
Which should tell you something, that there's a disconnect, and it's, about our values.
To briefly play devil's advocate so that I may get close to the devil so to stab him in the back. Like,
yes.
as a culture, we've been burnt a lot on queer baiting. Queer baiting is very much a real issue, and I can understand why people are sensitive towards queer baiting, because it's a very big problem. It's a very gross practice, and it is something that we, as queer consumers of media, are expected to be satisfied with. And that itself is not a problem. What is the problem is when you go too far about being anti-queer baiting, that you create this fucking insanely detailed laundry list of requirements that need to be fulfilled for a queer relationship to be considered canon. That's going much too far in the other direction. Where what you are then,
a checklist.
Yeah, what you are then doing is attacking people who are honest, who are making honest and earnest efforts to introduce queer representation into their media, and not allowing, and then attacking them for not being as good as this fake, checklist of shit that you invented yourself. Because
that you invent along the way. Like, people kept creating a new finish line constantly.
Yeah.
And it's like, just let the work be what the work is.
And at the same time, there's
Can
this
we go farther? Of
double
course we
standard
can.
where when it is when it is barely there, people are eating it up and like filling in the holes with their own like fan on shit. And it's like, you'll do that for something that is like fucking Captain America 3, for example, where it was like, oh, it's about Bucky and Cap wanting to kiss each other. Like, it fucking isn't. And like, they put that, they don't give a shit about that, aspect of these two characters that maybe is there, maybe isn't. Like, the final cut of the movie doesn't give a shit about that. But you're latching onto this little shit because you love it so much. And you're letting that have a path. But when this stuff is trying to make an honest attempt at, not even attempt, they're doing it from a very earnest place. They are putting in this representation. But because it doesn't fulfill this crazy lofty goal that literally nothing queer, straight, anything has ever actually succeeded in, other than like bullshit romance novels. Like, it's this ridiculous double, triple standard that is not doing anything, and as a culture, we need to fucking stop.
Yeah, like, and people are like, they're not cowards. It's not that they didn't go all the way. They didn't want to. It didn't fit what they were doing.
They did what was like, you actually watch Yuri on Ice and like, yes, that did absolutely everything that was necessary. Like, I was saying this in the beginning of the show, like after episode 2-3 is like, if this show ends up being queerbaity, it's gonna be an absolute disaster because they're setting it up to be so gay. And like, I mean, that is in itself diminutive, but reductive is more what I meant. But like, and I do still hold to that if the show didn't actually reach any kind of real relationship between the two and stayed in the kind of the first two episodes like, oh, he's so hot, I admire him so much, and then he's like, oh, I'm not wearing any clothes. Like, if they just stuck at that shit and not realized their potential, yeah, yell at the show. But the show didn't fucking do that. The show started there to subvert your plebeian expectations.
Yeah, would it have been nice? Yes. Has it been done before? Yes. Number 6 had an on-screen lip-to-lip kiss between two male-identifying characters on Japanese television. Would have that been nice? Yeah. But that's not what they did. And if that's enough for you to, like, not like it, then whatever, fine. You're entitled to your opinion. I'm just saying, it's not valueless. And they had their reasons for doing what they did.
I mean, you also have to keep in mind that they did have to be careful, because I don't know the explicit
Japan's a very homophobic society, unless it's specifically marketed towards these niche, like, fujoshi audiences. Like, Yuri on Ice was aired at 2:30 in the morning in Japanese time. Because it was a niche show about a subject most people weren't very interested in. It took Sao Yamamoto her entire career, essentially, as a director to get the show off the ground, because nobody wanted to make it, nobody believed in it.
Sao Yamamoto is a very critically acclaimed director, but she's never had the financial success that the quality of her work deserves.
No. And, Kubo is very similar. Like, they poured everything into this show to make it what it is, but nobody Literally nobody was expecting it to be popular.
Except for, like,
Nobody.
you and me.
I thought I was going to be the only one watching it.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was going to be like an amazing sleeper hit that people talked about later. Like, from a financial perspective, from a television productive perspective, this is by far the most risky anime that has been released in years. Like, these two women's entire career was going to be made or broken on the success of this show. The studio was making a huge risk by greenlighting this. Like, this was not a cheap or easy show to produce. And it was very risky material. So, I'm not surprised that they wanted to minimize what risks they could that wouldn't jeopardize the finished the message of the finished product. And if that means that we don't see their lips touch, that's a pretty small price to pay for the rest of the show being made. Like the fact that this show is successful and A, successful, and B, as massively successful as it is frankly a miracle, because anime has been so risk-averse for so long in recent history because it's so hard to draw a profit with anime.
Because your market's so small.
Your market is so small, and your market is pretty narrow-minded in a lot of ways. So actually making a successful anime means that you have to play it very safe. It's very much like the AAA video games industry, where, you know, everybody's making kind of the same game because it's what's proven to sell. So that's what you get a return on investment for.
Right.
But this show couldn't be made with a small-scale budget. In order for this show to be made and to have the impact that it requires to work, it needed to be made with a sizable budget, which is extremely risky. It is a fucking miracle that the show got made at all, and 10 times of that miracle that it is successful enough to justify its existence in the eyes of producers and money people. Like,
right.
It is this show is a huge deal, and we are going to see this show influence, hopefully. I mean, I don't want to make a
good
a
or
broad
bad
statement.
influence. We can't say for sure.
Yeah, but this show is a landmark entry in Japanese television, and especially as Japanese television is now made much more for a global audience. This is a fucking landmark work. Like, I compared it earlier to Cowboy Bebop, kind of offhandedly in terms of its broad appeal, but no, this is going to change shit. Both in Japan and outside of Japan.
Cowboy Bebop wasn't popular in Japan. This is insanely popular in Japan and out of Japan.
Yeah.
Merch is selling like crazy. They've had multiple merch, like, licensed cafes and, like, all this crazy shit.
All out. This gets, like, the fucking, like, what's another, like, kind of middle-of-the-road show that got, like, the full, multimedia treatment? Like,
I guess, like, Attack on Titan was the last very big anime, both within Japan and outside of it, I would say.
I would say that too, but, like,
in the sense that people who didn't watch anime were watching it.
Yeah. But, like,
and it was a cultural zeitgeist beyond anime people.
Yeah, but in terms of, like, merchandising and ways to monetize it, it's like fucking Love Live, or Hatsune Miku. Like, they are making as much, like, there's gonna be fucking blind bags in dollar stores here next year. It's like, I don't think it's there, but it's like right almost there.
I mean, their DVD sales in Japan have been astronomically, like, amazing.
Yeah.
Like,
I think the thing that separates from blind bags is that it's a show that's harder to market to kids.
Right.
Because it's like, because it's like, I can imagine, like,
it's not for kids.
I can imagine a little kid, not because it's like of content, I can imagine a little kid finding it boring.
Yeah, it's
like a child, like,
yeah, like
because it's a bunch of people talking, and then they do a foofy dance, like,
yeah,